prove you something. I'm fine on my own.
Metabee?
Come on.
Metabee, behave yourself.
What?
You heard me.
Don't think I need your help because I'm yanking my chassis. Oh! I'm finished.
Whoa, that dude must really hate pudding.
Icky.
Look to the camera. Oh, hello. Didn't see you there. I was in media res, just reading the Ars Gouda, which is the bestiary from Vampire Survivors. In case you couldn't tell, it's the actual in-game item that you pick up to access the bestiary, which I happened to write. My husband made me an actual physical version of the book. I am frigging delighted. Also, I want you to think about Vampire Survivors, about Balatro, about any number of these small indie games that came out of quote-unquote nowhere and surprised the big budget game industry by being really successful on terms that executives just couldn't understand. And I want you to think about that when we talk about Nintendo's price hike for certain games that came out of the Switch 2 reveal, because people are blaming tariffs. Hell, Nintendo's blaming tariffs. You know, that whole thing, what that man did over in America. But I don't buy it. Not entirely. Anyway, we do need to remember that months ago, the game industry was smacking its chops, looking at GTA 6, thinking, oh, they might be able to get away with jacking up the price to $100. I hope they do that. You see, people want to excuse Nintendo on this, but Nintendo is doing what the industry wants. This is where the industry's going. I would say that the end game is to eventually get us to $100 across the board, but this is the game industry. This is business. There is no end game, because they're just going to want more and more and more. So there are several reasons why I am not going to blame tariffs for this. Not in totality. And this is coming from me. I would absolutely love to blame everything on the right wing here. And I will portion some blame, but the game industry is being the game industry. They have form for this. And when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So no, I'm not going to excuse Nintendo on this one. In fact, I've got a whole video coming up where I do exactly not that.
I don't believe you. Reality? You've been pushing the bounds of my credulity for a while. In fact, I've struggled to believe anything is real since pretty much Brexit, but you, my good friend Reality, have absolutely gone too far. I can just about believe the current American shitscape. I can even believe that Elon Musk actually exists and isn't a weird political cartoon imbued with a perverse facsimile of life. But Nintendo, charging $80 for a video game. Reality is pushing the perimeters of, well, reality. And you know what? I think I'm actually, legitimately, going to straight up deny this is really a thing. Oh, the sweet incubating womb of ignorance. Nothing can reach me here. Just think back to when you last felt okay and have a do-over from there. It's not 2025, it never was, it's 2006. I've just started reviewing games for a living. EA just released Black. Anything is possible. The world's at my feet. Oh wait, no, that was the year my mum's boyfriend started carrying around a knife with my name on it. It's 2007. The world's at my... Wait, no, that was the year I moved in with a math teacher who would dress up like a Nazi for fun. It's 2008. Wait, no, moved to Mississippi. Wait, what year did my tits start looking good? We'll start from there. Let's see. Started the antihistamines in 2020. There we are. Nothing bad happened in 2020. It's not 2025, it's 2020, and the world is at my... Anyone could forgive me for thinking it's a joke, right? $80 for Mario Kart. Okay, Zilla, is this actually a thing? Like, legitimately, is that what they're charging? Because I keep looking at it and I genuinely don't believe it.
Oh yeah, it's real. You know, as if I needed a second reason to pass on another piece of Nintendo hardware. Frankly, they lost me at no new WarioWare DIY.
That's not an MSRP, that's a parody of the game industry's complete disconnect with normality. Actually, you know what? Maybe it's just America because of all the whole tree burning fascist coup thing. I'm sure if I checked the UK listings, I wouldn't find a 75 quid price tag slapped on the... Oh. I am quite honestly stunned by this one. We all knew Take-Two was considering it. The grasping bastards have considerable cultural leverage to do so with Grand Theft Auto 6. In fact, it sounds like game publishers were positively salivating at the idea of GTA 6 making it okay for all of them to jack up prices only a few years since the last hike. I'd expect that sort of move from a disgusting sleaze pit of a company like Take-Two, but Nintendo, well, I guess if nothing else, it's a hearty reminder that game corporations aren't your friend. And there is in fact no such thing as a good one. Nintendo may have its family-friendly mask, it may have its performative regard for responsible monetization, it may even conduct itself as slightly less of a toxic fuck dump than a number of other publishers we could mention, but make no mistake, within Nintendo's cavity beats the same heart that pulses within all mainstream game companies, the rotting, desiccated, ant-filled heart of an irredeemable cunt. So much for an exciting Switch 2 reveal, eh? So I have better things to do than sit through entire game company presentations, preferring to watch the actual interesting bits the morning after. But it really backfired here because I saw the news and in all seriousness my brain outright rejected it. Without seeing Nintendo's bold-faced fucking audacity firsthand, I mentally filed away the headlines I'd read as definitely nothing to be concerned about. Even now, after coming to grips with reality's latest kick in the clit, I can feel every neuron in my grey matter resisting the facts. Here we are though, at short last, the moment the industry was gagging for as it completely ran out of ways to falsify the grift of perpetual growth that our unhinged economy hinges on. Nintendo's signalling to the rest of the industry that it's time to start seeing if they can get away with this one, just to keep that growth grift limping along for another fiscal quarter or two. Such is the sheer mayhem of the business that companies can boast of record revenue and yet flail and flounder. Corporate management utterly terrified, not because they're running out of money, but because they are literally making too much. So much cash is flowing in, yet everything we've seen these past few years are the acts of desperate companies. And make no mistake, that's all it is. A desperate spinning of plates to keep a scam going, that's all it ever is. Do not buy any bullshit about how companies need to do this. Sod that. This is a billion-dollar industry that's made the predators in charge ultra wealthy. They have all the money they could ever need. But that's the problem, isn't it? Because it's not about just having the money they need, it's about wanting exponentially more money forever, except how can they keep getting more when they're already raking in billions? They've hit the ceiling on how many games a year they can sell, they've hit the ceiling on how much they can monetize those games, they've hit the ceiling on the growth they can fake via layoff savings. What we're seeing here is the last pathetic grasp of an industry that's out of fucking ideas for ways to fleece its customers and fool the infantile fantasists investing in them. When there is no more room in hell, just jack the prices up and hope that buys you more time. Now I know with some of the stuff that I've said and I'm gonna say, you'll get people arguing, well, it's not as if Nintendo is as bad as an Activision or Ubisoft. And you're right, but setting these price tags, which by the way are even more expensive physical, is going to enable those other companies. Like, they don't even have to wait for the green light they were gonna get from GTA 6, they've just gotten it from Nintendo. And that's what really makes me sick, is all those companies who have been waiting for this excuse to ask for a handout. Which is what the steady and arbitrary raising of prices is when you think about it. I mean, it's not like the games are getting bigger or better, is it? In fact, they're getting worse. Even the so-called deluxe editions of games, as we've explained in another video, have less content in them than they used to ever since the pay-to-access early scam has replaced items that had at least some meaningful value to players. So-called AAA games are inherently flimsier, smaller, and so much more hollow than they used to be, all because corporate gutted what they used to be. They can't even guarantee that their incomplete, skeletal live service games will be operational after a few months, let alone finished.
You're still mad at me?
How dare publishers expect more for less? How dare they hold their hands out like, money please? Not to keep bringing up a game I work on, but it really needs pointing out that Vampire Survivors is $5. $5 for a jaw-dropping level of content, and the expansions practically pile on a sequel's worth more gameplay for the same price or cheaper or fully fucking free. I've had the distinct pleasure of being able to see Punkle become a fucking powerhouse off the back of Vampire Survivors' staggeringly generous value prospect, and we keep seeing things like this. Indie video games that charge a fraction of the cost of a big budget game offer so much more game for the money and succeed in ways that make big budget publishers actively bloody jealous. It is entirely possible to make a ton of cash by being, you know, ethical and kind and not a predatory piece of shit. In fact, it's such a good way of succeeding in this cruel business that it's leaving the executive class absolutely baffled, which would be hilarious if their privileged cluelessness wasn't so fucking insulting and destructive. Don't believe those clown comics either if they tell you it's not that simple, that they can't just make their games more affordable, that they just can't adopt a business model like Vampire Survivors. They can.
Only the clown is impressed. The audience sees through everything that's happening.
It is that simple. They choose for it not to be. The tenets of business didn't just spring up out of nowhere, they weren't found in the forest. This mess is by design, a monster explicitly created and fed by utter fucking rifles, who lost control of it ages ago yet continue to feed the beast. Dickheads. The apologists are already out there making excuses for this inexcusable shit. Some of them are hardcore Nintendo fans, so predisposed toward forgiving Daddy, they'd let Miyamoto shit in their hair and wipe his ass on their eyeballs. Others are the usual corporate thralls, trotting out the usual laundry list of propaganda. Oh, something, something inflation, something, something not their fault, something, something, it's just business. I fucking hate it when people say things like it's just business. The phrase "it's just business" is a permission slip that businesses give themselves to conduct business however they like. Even worse is businesses exist to make money, as if having a singular reason for doing awful things somehow justifies them. No, it fucking doesn't. A flesh-eating parasite just exists to eat the flesh it's parasitizing. But if you had a brown crawler munching on your rectum, you'd hardly live and let live. Oh, and before we go any further, no, this isn't really about the Nazi president's tariffs. Those are fucking madness and are destructive on a whole other level, but they're not why the game industry is being the same avarice-led abomination it always is. I absolutely expect execs to tastelessly and opportunistically use the tariffs as an excuse for all sorts of exploitative things they were gonna do anyway, but I refuse to swallow a drop of their slime on this one. And anyone in games business leadership who tries it should be considered fucking sick for taking advantage of such a horrific situation. Just remember that the people currently running the game industry into the ground already have so much money they could take massive pay cuts and afford all the things they pretend their companies can't. But rather than turn down money they wouldn't miss, they'd rather terminate hundreds of jobs that people need. Please stop believing these tiny little monsters. This price hike is what the industry's wanted for a while. You might have noticed this already, but the prices are being jacked up worldwide, and, like, publishers are licking their lips, watching GTA 6 and literally hoping it'll cost $100. A full hundo for a base game Take-Two will absolutely monetize to strip mining levels. That's where they already were at before this week. Trade could be on fire or firing on all cylinders, and publishers would still charge anything they felt they could get away with. There is not enough emphasis across the entire landscape of rhetoric to express the depths of depravity we're talking about with the creatures in financial control. In fact, the global trade tax racket is simply one of several reasons why Nintendo's despicable price hike is particularly vicious, crude, and insulting. Video game publishers keep behaving like they haven't noticed this, but everyone's financially fucked. Well, everyone but the inoculated executives who've been doing plenty of the fucking, which is of course why publishers are so out of touch as to keep behaving like everybody has the disposable income to keep throwing at them. This is why I've been calling Nintendo's price hike mean-spirited and malicious. The world is getting violently expensive, not for dickhead executives and investors of course, but for the very folks whose money they rely on to stay in business. Charging them more is just plain ghoulish. Working class people are facing worsening punishments for being working class, taxed more, charged more, protected less, with fewer benefits. The least people deserve is some Mario Kart at the end of a long day of labour that the system's coerced out of them. And some of you may think that sounds entitled. Well, you know what? Everyone is quite literally entitled to escapism from the shit-fuck nightmare that's been inflicted on the lot of us. And now allow me to say, "Arr, matey!" for no related reason. I won't be surprised at all to see piracy surge. The fiefdomization of online streaming's already making it popular again, but look, there's a cost of living crisis. Landlords have been allowed to take upwards of half a tenant's earnings for rent, power bills are skyrocketing, and while some court jesters want to justify the game industry's pricing with "but inflation," they never acknowledge that wages are not rising along with inflation. Inflation that, by the way, is literally the fault of those very executives and investors who use it to excuse themselves. You know they could just stop it, right? I know it sounds oversimplified, but that's only because they make it sound like some force of nature nobody has any control over. Cave people didn't crack open a coconut one day to find some economy spilling out of it. Part the thighs with me on this one. I'm very, very fortunate enough to have maintained a good income via Patreon and my freelance work. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for the former. Part of that Patreon is literally budgeted for securing games to review because I purchase the majority of what I critique. And even with that privilege, I'm thinking twice about the games I get. Ever since the $70 hike, I've been less willing to buy games, and this is my job. This is literally what I do for a living, and I'm preparing for it to become unsustainable. So that's where I'm at. The point is, people have less and less money in a world where everything is costing more and more, and game publishers, always prone to a sense of entitlement and exceptionalism, are acting as if a populace increasingly struggling to pay rent and watching the resources they need to live skyrocket in price are still going to keep hundreds of dollars a month aside to spend on video games that offer less and less value for more and more cash. Some thralls used to justify excessive monetization to me by saying games are a luxury, so companies can charge what they like. But that absurd logic cuts a lot sharper the other way round. Games are a luxury. And guess what households cut out of their budget when they need to save money? Sorry, but when it's up against food and heating, Mario Kart suddenly looks like a worthless fucking frivolity. This, by the way, is why the argument that games were more expensive in the 90s is an utterly bloody stupid one, employed by those incapable of understanding historical context. Sure, you can claim games were more expensive in the day, but if you don't acknowledge how much further money went back then, how much more disposable income was around, as well as how it used to be normal for certain products to get cheaper over time instead of more expensive, you're being disingenuous or jizz ignorant. I had one strange commenter on the Big Blue Sky try to justify Nintendo's behaviour by pointing me to my own past video, the $60 myth, where I pointed out how the old games never raised their prices argument was bullshit and full games actually had gotten more expensive when you consider how DLC and microtransactions gated off content that used to be part of an all all-in cost of entry. I don't know what point they thought they were making. Increasing what I call the shell price of games isn't going to make all that DLC disappear, it's just going to make the full cost of enjoying a game all the more fucking unaffordable. Oh, and speaking of affordable, don't dare come to me with games are too expensive to make. I'll just say what I always say these days, I'll talk about the cost of making games as soon as the industry addresses the cost of paying executives. Same goes for those tariffs and all. Executives are where most of the money goes, bled out to be hoarded by the biggest financial drain a development budget can have, so fuck that shit. At this point, the industry is asking for a crash. It deserves it, and it'll be entirely the fault of the dickheads running it. If not for the fact that it would harm thousands of innocent people working in the business, I would full on delight in the mainstream game industry crashing and burning. Or maybe what these fucking leeches are banking on is games becoming unaffordable for less wealthy people. Maybe pricing more and more people out of the market is some sort of fucked up scheme to redefine video games as luxurious status symbols, allowing publishers to keep jacking up prices and milking more money out of fewer, richer people. It wouldn't be the first time an industry has done that. It's not like the vast majority of money made by microtransactions doesn't come from a tiny percentage of so-called whales. Publishers already know they can get a lot of cash if they just swindle the right targets. Of course, this is a bit of conspiratorial thinking on my part, but when you're increasing your prices for non-essential goods on the cusp of a global recession, who knows what's going through your head? What I do know is this: it's fucking vile. What Nintendo is trying to normalize here, and normalization of horrible practices is always a prime motive, is absolutely frigging disgusting to me. I really mean that. I am disgusted by Nintendo. Just remember, it is always morally okay to pirate Nintendo's games. It's fun as well.
So yeah, sorry that it's a bit of a dour and dire video today. That's the game industry for you. It doesn't let you linger on positivity for long. Now, I know that what I've said is going to offend some people, that some people will say that, no, this is all because of the whole trade war bullshit, but no. This is what the game industry wants. And what Nintendo is normalizing, what Nintendo is communicating with what it's doing to the wider mainstream game industry is not good. It is, in fact, shit. And you can, in fact, thank God for me.